This guide covers all the actions Dawntrail's Marauder and Warrior learns from level 1 to 100 in order. We go over how each action is meant to be used and recommend ways to use it when relevant. We will not be covering how tanking works in too much detail, as I have a separate video that goes more in depth on this particular subject that I highly recommend you also take a look at if you're new to tanking. We will summarize the attack rotation at level 50 and then summarize changes in it at level 60, 70, 80 and 90. In the final summary at level 100, we outline an optimized opener and explain how it leads into the general rotation alongside 2-minute burst considerations. We also touch on the stat priorities of the warrior. Now then, Heavy Swing is your starting weapon skill. It is the first step in a 3-step combo, more commonly called a 1-2-3 combo, so at this point you simply use it repeatedly. At level 4, you learn the weapon skill Maim, the second step of your 1-2-3 combo. Now, you alternate between Heavy Swing and Maim. At level 6, you learn the ability Berserk. While weapon skills incur 2.5 second recast time where you can't cast another weapon skill, abilities are unaffected by this recast timer, and so can be cast between them. As such, you can activate Berserk between the uses of 2 weapon skills. If you want to know more, I have a video in the description that goes more in depth on this. Berserk makes your next 3 weapon skills guaranteed to be critical direct hits. Critical hits deal 40% more damage by default, but is increased by the critical hit stat. Direct hits deal 25% more damage, meaning that by combining these, Berserk effectively increases your damage by 75% for your next 3 weapon skills. At this level, you should use Heavy Swing, followed by Berserk, and then use Maim, Heavy Swing, Maim, to get the maximum value out of this cooldown. You should try to use it whenever it is available rather than saving it, due to its somewhat short cooldown of only 1 minute. At level 8, you learn the ability and role action Rampart, which reduces all damage taken for a while. It is best used early on in a fight when there are the most enemies and you will take the biggest brunt of the damage. Make sure to wait with using it until the enemies reach you, such that it blocks the largest amount of damage. You should not save Rampart for when you're close to death. Use it early and often. At level 10, you learn the weapon skill Overpower, your go-to action for area of effect damage, or AoE for short. Use this whenever you're fighting 2 or more enemies. Berserk can simply be spent on 3 overpowers back to back. You also learn the ability Defiance, your tank stance, which multiplies enmity by 10. You should always have this active, as it practically forces enemies to focus you in combat. Take note that if you enter content where your level is scaled down, the effect of Defiance is toggled off, so make sure to check that it is still there when you start. At level 12, you learn the ability and role action Low Blow, which stuns the enemy. You can use this to prevent spell casts from enemies, or stop an enemy from swinging at you for a bit, reducing damage taken. Often, bosses will be immune, but in the early dungeons this is not always the case. At level 15, you learn the weapon skill Tomahawk. It comes with a massive enmity multiplier that stacks with Defiance. If you hit something with this, that enemy should stick to you for a long time. Use this for pulling enemies, and try to use it just as the enemy gets in range when pulling with it, so you can do something else when they get up close. You can also use it for picking up enemies that appear during a fight. Take note that Tomahawk does not break your 1-2-3 combo and can be used between the combo pieces just fine. You also learn the ability and role action Provoke. This ability sets your enmity equal to whoever has the most enmity on the target and then applies a gigantic amount of enmity on top, which stacks with Defiance. This makes it a very reliable tool for picking up enemies that appear during a fight, or enemies you lose the attention of. In a group with multiple tanks, you should not use it on cooldown. You should use it tactically when necessary. Combining Tomahawk and Provoke can allow you to reliably pull 3 enemies without stopping when you get comfortable with pulling multiple packs of enemies at a time. In fact, dungeons become available at level 15, and for tanking especially, it is very useful to know a special interaction of your starting action Sprint. Sprint lasts 20 seconds if you use it before you enter combat. If you use it while in combat, it only lasts 10 seconds, so using it just before pulling is beneficial. At level 18, you learn the ability and role action Interject, which can be used to stop interruptible actions. If an enemy is using an interruptible action, the cast bar will be red and pulsing and blinking at you. It is almost always beneficial to interrupt an action, so do it when you get the opportunity. When in the cast you interrupt rarely ever matters, as most enemies will do nothing for the remainder of the cast regardless. At level 22, you learn the ability and role action Reprisal, which reduces the damage all enemies around you do. You can use this action when Rampart runs out to soften the damage you receive. Try not to use both at the same time, as that is overkill for most situations. If you know the boss is using an attack that hits your entire party, Reprisal is also a good choice to bring out at that time, since it softens it for everyone, not just yourself. At level 26, you learn the weapon skill Storm's Path, the third step of your 1-2-3 combo. Storm's Path additionally heals you when it is used. With Storm's Path in your 1-2-3 combo, you should instead use this combo on 2 targets specifically, alternating targets to make sure both enemies are hitting you. You can see that an enemy is targeting you by the gems in the enemy list turning red. For 3 or more targets, you should still just use Overpower. Regarding Berserk, you can use it whenever you like now, as you will likely just use a 1-2-3 combo, and the order does not matter for Berserk. Just make sure you're not about to use Tomahawk when you use Berserk. At level 30, you learn the ability Thrill of Battle. This increases your HP somewhat and heals you for the same amount. It should of course be considered among your defensive cooldown options, but at this moment it is significantly weaker than both Rampart and Reprisal, and will continue to be so until level 78. You could save Thrill of Battle as an emergency button, since it heals for the same amount. Also at level 30, doing your class questline will eventually lead you to the Warrior quest, which is available once you complete the main scenario quest, Self-Management. Once you unlock the Warrior, remember to equip your Soul Crystal to change into the Warrior job. At level 32, you learn the ability and role action Arm's Length. This ability makes you immune to most knockback effects, and if a normal enemy hits you, its attack speed is slowed for a while. This makes it a very potent defensive tool on packs of enemies. I recommend adding it after Reprisal in your defensive order, unless you need both. At level 35, you learn the weapon skill Inner Beast and unlock the Beast Gauge. When you use Maim and Storm's Path, you generate 10 and 20 Beast Gauge respectively, and you can hold up to 100. Using Inner Beast spends 50 Beast Gauge. If your next weapon skill will make you generate Beast Gauge beyond 100, use Inner Beast. Otherwise, you should simply stockpile Beast Gauge. When you use Berserk, try to time it so the next step in your 1-2-3 combo is Storm's Path, if you have enough Beast Gauge for 2 Inner Beasts, meaning 80 or more. Then you should fit Storm's Path and 2 Inner Beasts in any order in the Berserk. If you can only afford 1 Inner Beast, you should use Berserk when Maim is the next step in your 1-2-3 combo instead. This means 20 or more Beast Gauge. I would recommend when starting a fight to simply go with a 1-2-3 combo in Berserk to not delay the combo. Using it at all is better than using it perfectly. Inner Beast does not break your 1-2-3 combo, so you can safely switch between it and combo pieces as you desire. At level 38, you learn the ability Vengeance. In addition to reducing the damage you take significantly, it also makes you swing back for some damage on every enemy that hits you. In your order of defensive cooldowns, you can use Vengeance as your first option due to its high potency, not to mention its offensive value. Remember to not overlap your defensive cooldowns however, as in most circumstances it is unnecessary and excessive. My recommended use order is Vengeance, Reprisal, next pack, Rampart, Reprisal. Preferably, when doing AoE packs, you want Vengeance to be used in one pull and Rampart to be used in the other. This leaves Arm's Length to be used for one of the pulls, either alongside Reprisal or after it if needed. Sometimes you'll go between pulls fast enough that Reprisal won't be ready for both pulls. In this situation, Arm's Length can replace it as well. Speaking of which, take note that while Vengeance is active, if you activate Arm's Length, it will not be able to apply its attack speed slowing effect. At level 40, you learn the weapon skill Mythril Tempest. This is your follow-up attack after Overpower. Mythril Tempest also grants you the Surging Tempest buff, increasing all damage you do for 30 seconds. Using it again will extend it by 30 seconds, but only up to a maximum of 60 seconds. On 2 targets, you should only use the Mythril Tempest combo to gain the Surging Tempest buff, and otherwise use your 1-2-3 combos. On 3 or more targets, you alternate between Overpower and Mythril Tempest and nothing else. If possible, try to use Berserk just before Mythril Tempest in this case. On single target, applying the Surging Tempest buff with Mythril Tempest is a small damage gain over not using it, but only if it does not lose you out on an Inner Beast used during Berserk. And you get to attack for the full duration of Surging Tempest. It is a damage loss if you attack for less than 25 seconds of the duration. When starting a single target fight, I recommend opening with the Mythril Tempest combo and then using Berserk to boost your starting damage. Take note that Berserk also increases the duration of Surging Tempest by 10 seconds, assuming it is already active. At level 42, you learn the ability Holmgang. When used, it makes you incapable of dying for 10 seconds. If you use Holmgang while targeting something, you will lose the Holmgang effect early if the target dies, for some reason. However, using Holmgang on a target will snare it for the duration, not that that is particularly helpful in most situations. For this reason, it is recommended to try and target yourself when using Holmgang to avoid this side effect. Holmgang can be kept as a last resort when things go completely wrong. The closer to death you are when you use it, the more likely it is that you'll actually end up preventing damage with it. At level 45, you learn the weapon skill Steel Cyclone. This attack is an AoE alternative to Inner Beast, which beats it on 3 or more targets. Take note that your AoE combo does not generate any beast gauge, so if you are in a single target or 2 target situation, but know an AoE situation is coming up shortly, it might be beneficial to stockpile beast gauge for that specifically. On AoE, if possible, you want to have Mythril Tempest and as many Steel Cyclones as you can during Berserk. Often, this will be 0 Steel Cyclones though. At level 48, you learn the ability and role action Shirk, which transfers 25% of your enmity to your target. This is used for tank switching. When your tank partner uses Provoke to grab attention, you shirk your partner to push them further ahead, to ensure the enemy stays on them. This is most useful in high level content, but it is nonetheless useful to know how to use it. At level 50, you learn the weapon skill Storm's Eye. This is an alternative step 3 to your single target combo. It only generates 10 beast gauge and it does not heal you, but it gives you the Surging Tempest buff previously exclusive to Mythril Tempest. Broadly speaking, you want to make sure to apply Surging Tempest as quickly and efficiently as possible in a fight, and then keep Surging Tempest active throughout the fight. If the duration is below 30 seconds, you can choose to use the combo to extend the duration. Otherwise, use the Storm's Path combo instead to generate extra beast gauge. If Berserk is coming up shortly, make sure the duration of Surging Tempest will be below 50 seconds when Berserk is used as well to not waste that free duration. You also learn the ability Infuriate, which, when used, immediately grants you 50 beast gauge. You can hold up to 2 Infuriates at a time, and then use them between your weapon skills. Keep in mind that you only generate 1 charge every 60 seconds, so it would take a total of 120 seconds to regain both charges. The main benefit of Infuriate is that it allows you to open a fight with a Berserk containing Storm's Eye and 2 Inner Beasts, and every subsequent Berserk, you only need 50 beast gauge stockpiled to fit Storm's Path and 2 Inner Beasts. It also enables you to use Steel Cyclone at least occasionally in AoE situations. To summarize at level 50, let's cover an actual boss fight opener and rotation. Pull the boss with Tomahawk and use Infuriate as you run. Then use Heavy Swing, and then Maim, and then Berserk. Then use Storm's Eye, Inner Beast, and Infuriate and another Inner Beast. Then you simply do the Storm's Path combo when you don't need to extend Surging Tempest, and Storm's Eye when you do. When your next weapon skill will overflow your beast gauge, instead use Inner Beast. When Berserk is ready, plan it such that you can use, preferably, Storm's Path or Eye and 2 Inner Beasts. This requires 30 beast gauge for Path and 40 for Eye, as well as 1 Infuriate. Mainly use Infuriate for Berserk. For 3 or more targets, use Overpower and Mythril Tempest in place of your 1-2-3 combos, and replace Inner Beast with Steel Cyclone. Fit as many Steel Cyclones as you can in Berserk. With that, let's continue on past level 50. At level 54, Inner Beast is permanently upgraded to Fell Cleave, greatly increasing its potency. This potency increase means that Steel Cyclone is only superior on 4 or more targets. Additionally, the optimal Berserk window for 1-3 targets is now 3 Fell Cleaves. This is only possible if you use Berserk with 100 beast gauge and 1 Infuriate, or 50 beast gauge and 2 Infuriates. The second best option, requiring at least 30 beast gauge and 1 Infuriate, is to use 2 Fell Cleaves and 1 Storm's Path, or 2 Fell Cleaves and 1 Mythril Tempest on 3 targets. This requires 50 beast gauge, of course. At level 56, you learn the short cooldown defensive ability Raw Intuition. This ability reduces all damage you take by a bit, but more importantly causes each of your weapon skills to heal you for a significant amount per target you hit. Due to the duration of 6 seconds, there's enough time for 3 weapon skills if you late weave this action, so try your best to do this. When done in an AoE scenario, this ability will almost always fully heal you on every weapon skill, making you nigh invincible in those 6 seconds. On a single target, the best result is still a very respectable 1200 potency. Due to the short cooldown of this ability, you should try to use this often. When cycling cooldowns, you may find it very useful to start with Raw Intuition, then when it runs out, use one of the longer options, and then Raw Intuition again, greatly extending the total time you can keep up defenses. At level 58, you learn the ability Equilibrium, which heals you for a large amount on a minute cooldown. If you are on low enough HP to make use of all the healing, you can assist your healer and give them more time by using this. I recommend, when cycling cooldowns, to use it to keep yourself up if there's only a few seconds left until Raw Intuition can carry you back up to safety. In a single target encounter, Equilibrium is equally as powerful as Raw Intuition in terms of healing. At level 60, Steel Cyclone is permanently upgraded to Decimate, which is better than Fell Cleave on 3 or more targets, making it your best spender for AoE. This is done in the same way as described for Fell Cleave. For 2 targets, the best option is still 3 Fell Cleaves. The only major change since level 50 to your rotation is that Fell Cleave is superior to Storm's Path, which means you want to try to have 150 beast gauge for an optimal Berserk. Defensively, you have 2 of your best survival cooldowns, Raw Intuition standing out as such a potent healing tool that on AoE it makes you nearly invincible. It is also viable to use Holmgang to last a few extra seconds to then apply Raw Intuition to save yourself in a tough spot, as another suggestion for inspiration. At level 62, you learn the ability Onslaught, which functions as a gap closer. It can hold up to 2 charges and generates 1 every 30 seconds. Because the warrior job does not itself have any ability to buff its non-weapon skill attacks, aside from Surging Tempest, you can, outside of optimization with a raid team, make extremely liberal use of this ability. In fact, due to it containing 2 charges, you should always use it in such a way that 1 charge is busy charging at all times. If you're trying to optimize, keep in mind that the distance Onslaught can move you in an instant can save you over 3 seconds of running, so it is rarely worth it sitting on Onslaught charges if you need to run a significant distance to your target. At level 64, you learn the ability Upheaval, which causes you to punch your opponent in the face, or the shins depending on their size, or your size. It has no cost and a 30-second cooldown, so you should use it whenever it is available for some free damage. Make sure to weave it between your weapon skills. While it is not affected by Berserk, it is affected by Surging Tempest, so try to make sure Upheaval is always used while this damage bonus is active. It is worth delaying the first Upheaval until after you have the buff. At level 66, you gain the trait Enhanced Infuriate, which causes Fell Cleave and Decimate to reduce the cooldown of Infuriate by 5 seconds. This does not change your rotation, although it does let you have a lot more beast gauge to work with. You should try your best to never sit on both charges of Infuriate, and one way to avoid that even at the start of combat is to weave Infuriate after your first oGCD. Since Infuriate simply gives you beast gauge, you will start combat with at least 50 beast gauge instead of 0 as a result of this. At level 68, you learn the ability Shake It Off, which shields you and all party members for a decent amount of damage. It also puts a healing over time effect on your party. The cooldown isn't too long, so you can use it whenever you see raid-wide damage incoming. In a pinch, you can also use it to protect just yourself or just an individual player that really needs it. Keep in mind that Shake It Off also has an additional effect to remove some of your other defensive cooldowns, should they be active on you, to make the potency of the shield larger. In most scenarios, you don't want this, so make sure to plan the use of Shake It Off around that. This can be helpful for very specific situations and raid scenarios though. Due to the presence of the healing over time component, it is more effective if you use Shake It Off as close to when the attack you want to reduce as possible, but still in time to reduce it. At level 70, Berserk is permanently upgraded to Inner Release, changing a couple of things about the ability, but also adding a lot of new things. Inner Release makes only your next 3 Fell Cleaves and Decimates free, but also guaranteed to critically direct hit. You have 15 seconds to spend these, and since it does not affect any other actions, you can fill in with other things between if you so desire. It also makes you immune to most crowd controlling effects in the game, including knockbacks and stuns. The way it changes your rotation is that you now simply use 3 Fell Cleaves or 3 Decimates during Inner Release. You can also now spend beast gauge whenever you like, although if you want to optimize, stockpiling a bit of beast gauge for raid cooldowns may be helpful. The immunity to crowd control and knockbacks portion is very neat, but is mostly seen as a detail in most situations, but fortunately is considered a separate buff from inner release that lasts 15 seconds, just like the Fell Cleave and Decimate portion. In very rare circumstances, the knockback immunity may be detrimental, so make sure to take note of this when using inner release, if you plan to get knocked somewhere. Since level 60, the big changes to your rotation are that you now have Onslaught and Upheaval as some oGCD attacks. Onslaught mainly affecting your mobility. On top of that, you can now always find the beast gauge to do 3 Fell Cleaves or 3 Decimates in the inner release window. From now on, you should make sure that Infuriate isn't going to reach 2 charges in the inner release window, but aside from this, your rotation is mostly the same, just with more Fell Cleaves. Given that you don't need Infuriate for your inner release window, you can also much more aggressively spend Infuriate whenever you want. This changes your opener to the following: pull with Tomahawk and Infuriate, then use Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Eye, and then weave inner release and Upheaval. Then use Fell Cleave, weaving Onslaught, another Fell Cleave and Onslaught, and then another Fell Cleave. You can also use Fell Cleave again alongside Infuriate and another Fell Cleave, and then finish with a Storm's Path combo followed by one more Fell Cleave. At level 72, Infuriate is upgraded to grant the effect Nascent Chaos. Nascent Chaos causes your Decimate to turn into Chaotic Cyclone, either until you use it or until 30 seconds pass. Chaotic Cyclone is a super steel cyclone that is always guaranteed to do critical direct damage, as if it inherently has the Berserk effect. It also inherently reduces the cooldown of Infuriate, just like Fell Cleave and Decimate. On 2 or more targets, Chaotic Cyclone is better than Fell Cleave. On a single target, Chaotic Cyclone's guaranteed critical direct damage is a minuscule amount stronger than a regularly hitting Fell Cleave. But on average, Fell Cleave will always win on damage in the long run. My recommendation is to only use Chaotic Cyclone on 2 or more targets and simply ignore this minor issue entirely. Keep in mind that even if Chaotic Cyclone overrides Decimate, it is not counted by inner release, so it does not interact with any part of the inner release effect, making it completely safe to use Chaotic Cyclone during this buff if you need to. As such, on AoE pulls, your opener should be Overpower, weave Infuriate, then Mythril Tempest to get Surging Tempest, and then weave Inner Release, and then start with Chaotic Cyclone followed by Decimates. You can use Infuriate again either in between the Decimates or at the end depending on preference. Just keep in mind that Inner Release only lasts 15 seconds. A bonus detail regarding an interaction of Chaotic Cyclone with Raw Intuition. All weapon skills in the warrior arsenal that inherently critical hits, like Chaotic Cyclone does, also automatically causes the heal from Raw Intuition to always critically heal. This can sometimes be very helpful if you need a large amount of healing quickly. At level 74, Mythril Tempest is improved to grant 20 Beast Gauge. This causes your AoE rotation to generate Beast Gauge as fast as your single target Storm's Path combo. While this does not change your rotation's priorities at all, it does allow you to use Decimate much more regularly on AoE. At level 76, Shake It Off is improved to also heal everyone for a decent amount on cast. This doesn't really change how you use it, but it does make it more effective if used when players are already missing HP. More importantly, you also learn the ability Nascent Flash. On a shared cooldown with Raw Intuition, this action instead applies Nascent Flash to you and Nascent Glint to an ally. Nascent Flash applies the same healing component of Raw Intuition to yourself, but Nascent Glint applies both the same healing as well as the damage reduction component of Raw Intuition. Both of these effects last 6 seconds just like Raw Intuition, so you should still try to late weave it. Some players like to use macros to help them target for Nascent Flash. If you're going to use Raw Intuition only for the healing component anyway, then you should instead use Nascent Flash and use the opportunity to heal someone else along with you. When tanking large amounts of damage on the other hand, it is likely more beneficial to keep the damage reduction component for yourself. Remember that Nascent Flash also has the automatic critical heal interaction with Chaotic Cyclone. At level 78, Thrill of Battle is improved to also increase the healing you receive for its duration by 20%. This additional component causes Thrill of Battle to change from being simply a heal with some temporary extra HP to become an indirect damage reduction by both expanding your health bar while also expanding incoming heals to match. With this improvement, there is reason to use Thrill of Battle as a higher priority cooldown, as this places its power level as a defensive cooldown somewhere between Rampart and Reprisal. If you combine Thrill of Battle with Equilibrium, you will also receive more healing from Equilibrium, so it is recommended to use Equilibrium at some point during Thrill of Battle. At level 80, Nascent Chaos is improved to turn Fell Cleave into Inner Chaos, also known as the legendary Feller Cleave. Just like Chaotic Cyclone, this attack both has the innate Berserk effect as well as the innate ability to reduce the cooldown of Infuriate. Its potency makes it superior to Chaotic Cyclone on 1 or 2 targets. Since level 70, you've mainly gotten upgrades to existing attacks, and some defensive tools. Mythril Tempest now generating Beast Gauge makes Decimate far more readily available. In terms of what buttons you press, your opener is entirely unchanged, although 2 of the Fell Cleaves will be Inner Chaos instead. At level 82, Raw Intuition is permanently upgraded to Bloodwhetting. This increases its duration to 8 seconds and adds an extra, half as long damage reduction effect equally as large as the first one, known as Stem the Flow, rewarding you for timing the use of Bloodwhetting closer to the incoming damage. It also adds a barrier to your use, called Stem the Tide. These 2 effects, Stem the Tide and Stem the Flow, alongside the 8-second duration, are all added onto Nascent Flash as well, and both are in this case applied to your target, not you. As long as you continue to efficiently late weave these, it is now possible to fit 4 weapon skills in the window, increasing the healing. When a tank buster is coming your way, try to time the application of Bloodwhetting in a late weave, so that you both get the maximum healing and the maximum damage reduction. At level 84, your 1-2-3 combos for single target get a potency boost. This does not really change your rotation at all. Equilibrium is also further upgraded to apply a heal over time effect, nearly doubling its healing potential. It does not change how you use it, but take note that if you use Equilibrium while affected by Thrill of Battle, the healing boosting effect of Thrill of Battle will affect the entire duration of Equilibrium's heal over time component as well. At level 86, you learn the ability Orogeny, which functions as an AoE alternative to Upheaval, even sharing its cooldown. On 3 or more targets, you use this instead to punch everyone around you in the face and shins, instead of just your target. At level 88, Onslaught is granted an extra charge. This does not change how you should use it, but it does grant you even more freedom in how you choose to use it for mobility or damage. At level 90, you learn the weapon skill Primal Rend. Whenever you use Inner Release, you're granted 1 single use of Primal Rend, and Primal Rend itself is not affected by Inner Release and does not spend the stacks either. The buff enabling Primal Rend lasts 30 seconds and is not tied to Inner Release at all. This attack causes you to whirl into the air and onto your target as a gap closing effect, and does an enormous amount of guaranteed critical direct hit damage to the target, and even does some damage in an area around it. Needless to say, you should use this attack when it is available. Take note that the attack takes a while to resolve, so don't try to double weave after it. Since level 80, you've mainly gotten some upgrades to existing actions, like Bloodwhetting, Equilibrium, and the addition of Orogeny, and of course Primal Rend. The way this changes your opener is that I recommend using Primal Rend immediately after the first Inner Chaos in the opener, and then work your way through the Inner Release Fell Cleaves, and finish with another Infuriate Inner Chaos. This also extends your opener so much that finishing with a 1-2-3 Fell Cleave lets you use Infuriate again for 1 more Inner Chaos. At level 92, Vengeance permanently upgrades to Damnation, making it reduce damage by 40% instead of 30%. The first time you're hit in the duration, or when it expires, you also gain a healing over time effect. None of this changes how you use it, although now it is really strong. At level 94, Rampart is upgraded to also increase healing received in its duration, and also your single target combos and Fell Cleave get a potency boost. The Rampart upgrade means that if you're going to use a healing action, it may be beneficial to use it during it rather than after it ends. The potency boost instead means that Decimate is better on 4 or more targets, and Fell Cleave is best on up to 3 targets. At level 96, Inner Release is upgraded to cause the free Fell Cleaves and Decimates to grant Burgeoning Fury. Reaching 3 stacks of this buff turns it into Wrathful instead, and changes Inner Release to Primal Wrath, an oGCD attack that, of course, you should use immediately when available. At level 98, Reprisal is upgraded to last 15 seconds instead of 10. This does not change how you use it. At level 100, Primal Rend is upgraded to grant Primal Ruination ready for 20 seconds when used, and turn into Primal Ruination, which of course you should use afterwards. Primal Ruination is a melee range version of Primal Rend in every way, except it does slightly more damage. To round off, let's first talk about an opener, followed by general rotation, as well as how this works with the 2-minute burst. And finally, let's briefly touch on stat priorities on gear. Let's begin. Start with Tomahawk, weaving Infuriate, then do Heavy Swing and Maim. Then use Storm's Eye, weaving Inner Release, and if you intend to use a Gem Draft, weave it here as well. Then use Inner Chaos, weaving Upheaval and Onslaught. Primal Rend, weaving Onslaught, and Primal Ruination, weaving Onslaught. Then use Fell Cleave 3 times, and then weave Primal Wrath and Infuriate into another Inner Chaos. Then do a full Storm's Path combo, Fell Cleave, weaving Infuriate, and finish with Inner Chaos. If your GCD is 2.45 or faster, you can also weave the Gem Draft before the initial Storm's Eye. If you need one for movement for whatever reason, you can skip the third Onslaught. This then leads to the general rotation. Warrior's general rotation revolves around keeping the Surging Tempest buff up with Storm's Eye, and when that is covered, filling with Storm's Path combos. Weave Upheaval on the following GCD when it is available. If you aggressively try to use it the instant it is available, it might sometimes delay your GCD depending on your skill speed. And knowing when you can and cannot weave Upheaval in time can take some practice to get used to. Onslaught should be kept on cooldown at all times, but you should stockpile 2 charges for bursts or sudden need for mobility. Infuriate should never sit on 2 charges either, so when it is close to being ready, spend one. Keep in mind that the full inner release window will move the Infuriate timer by at least 22.5 seconds, 27.5 if you include Primal Rend and Ruination. So you may want to make sure you have space for the beast gauge of Infuriate before using inner release. Whenever inner release is ready, you should try to use it as quickly as possible. However, as Primal Rend has a 30-second use window, you can choose to delay this if you know there are a chance of some raid buffs boosting its damage. This also applies for Primal Ruination. Speaking of raid buffs, typically, in a coordinated group in Savage content for example, raid buffs are applied around 5 to 8 seconds into a fight, somewhat depending on the job. Which tends to mean around when you use inner release anyway. The reason why Upheaval is delayed one additional GCD is to both make space for a Gem Draft, but also make sure the buffs are up in time. After that, assuming no boss mechanics delaying it, you can expect raid cooldowns to come up every 2 minutes on the dot, assuming the group is coordinated. This means that if you use inner release on cooldown, this should organically line up with raid cooldowns. There are, however, a few things you can do to optimize around this burst window. If you stockpile some beast gauge, save 1 Infuriate and up to 2 Onslaughts, you can bring quite a lot of extra damage into the time frame where you do the most damage. Damage increasing raid buffs last 20 seconds, so under the perfect conditions, you would have Primal Rend, Primal Ruination, 3 free Fell Cleaves, 2 Inner Chaos, and 1 regular Fell Cleave inside the window. With the second Inner Chaos being the hardest part to make fit due to how Infuriate's cooldown can be a bit unpredictable. For AoE adjustments, for 3 or more targets, you use the Mythril Tempest combo as your filler, and use Chaotic Cyclone instead of Inner Chaos, and Orogeny replaces Upheaval. On 4 or more targets, Decimate also replaces Fell Cleave. All other cooldowns are used as normal. Finally, regarding stat priorities, take note that in nearly every single case, item level beats out optimal secondary stats. This means you should always prioritize gear with higher item level, as long as it has strength on it. After that, warrior stat priority is critical hit, then skill speed after your preference, then direct hit and then determination, and finally tenacity. Take note that direct hit and determination are extremely close in value to each other. Fortunately, direct hit is only found on materia for tanks, so you simply melt direct hit into pieces that you don't need critical hit or skill speed for. Under certain circumstances, direct hit can sometimes be so strong that it overtakes even critical hit in value. Tenacity is last because it is like a slightly worse determination in terms of damage output, and the damage reduction component is simply too small to make a significant difference, so it is preferred to prioritize maximizing your damage output instead. Comfortable skill speed amounts are very subjective, but you have 3 common options. 0 skill speed, meaning a GCD of 2.50, may be difficult to get outside of perfectly optimized gear sets. A GCD of 2.45, played perfectly, will drift inner release every 2 minutes. A GCD of 2.4 will instead drift Upheaval regularly back and forth. The difference is reasonably small, so I recommend going with whichever skill speed amount you like best. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, Initially in Dawntrail, Primal Rend granted Primal Ruination ready for 30 seconds, which led to the trick known as Primal Ruination smuggling. When you used the odd-minute inner release, you simply held Primal Rend to the very last moment. That way, Primal Ruination could be used right at the start of the 2-minute burst by carrying this effect like a weird kind of relay race.